So we're just going to do a quick, a quick Q&A with these two extraordinary guys who founded Cellulant, which is a payments company originally based in Kenya, but now throughout Africa. Bolaji is from Nigeria,
Yeah.
and Ken is from Kenya. Tens of millions of farmers from across 34 countries in Africa use their company's blockchain technology to help sell them goods widely and more easily, increasing their volume. You know, remember there's, I think, probably 400 million people who are unbanked,
Yeah.
who don't have a bank account in Africa. And these guys help to create jobs, as Linda talked about, by empowering micro-entrepreneurs to set up neighborhood kiosks that provide financial services to that unbanked community. So I wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions. We see innovation in payments across the globe. I mean, not just obviously in Africa. What made you realize that a uniquely African solution would work and was necessary?
I mean, thank you, Edgar. This was what made us realize that the world needed an African payment solution. For Africa to join the world in terms of development and to realize its potential, it can't follow the journey other countries have followed. The financial system can't follow the American or British model of banks are set up, checking accounts are set up, credit card networks are set up, and then apps. Africa has to jump from nothing to something. And that jump from nothing to something is really based on the mobile phone. And we said if you could connect the existing financial institutions to the millions of mobile phones that are available on the backbone of technologies like blockchains that build trust, you can really, really change the lives of millions of people. And that's what we've really done on the continent.
Well, it's incredible what these guys have done. And I want to say, in my next question to Ken, these guys just raised a round of $48 million. Led by TPG Growth and the Rise Fund. I think it's probably the largest private round raised in sub-Saharan Africa ever, number one. Number two, it's probably the first large amount of money raised by people who don't have their hand out like this, trying to take bribery. And number three, most of the entrepreneurs in the area, to the extent that they exist, are expats. So for black Africans to not be on the take, as it were, and to go out and raise the largest round that's ever been raised in sub-Saharan Africa, it's not only a tremendous tribute to you, but it serves as a tremendous inspiration to all the other people like yourselves who have the dreams to build a company and now recognize that it's possible. And I want to ask Ken, how did you go about raising the money, and how did you get introduced to Bill and decide that the Rise Fund and TPG Growth were the right kind of partners for you guys?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Edgar. I think we started this journey about 24 months ago. And quite frankly, it took a little longer than we thought it was going to take. And we started off with a long list of about 60 investors. And we knew it was going to be an incredibly difficult journey. And somewhere along the way, this actually looked like it was failing, actually. Most of the investors had a hard time understanding the very many pieces of a complex payments business in Africa, because it's not as neat, as tidy as some of the other payment platforms in the US and other developed markets, because the infrastructure and the fragmentation is just different. But along the way, a couple of things happened, and Endeavor was one of them, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. But I think what was interesting about TPG was that, so first they had a very good team out of London that was focused on Africa that actually understood the payment space. And this team then went through the deal process and eventually put us in front of Bill. And it was a terrifying experience. I mean, you know, if coming from where Bolaji and I were sort of born and bred in Kenya and Nigeria. Actually didn't go to school in the cities. We went to school in the rural areas. And for a long time, we've been watching this internet wave and reading about San Francisco and the Silicon Valley. And so we took out this I think it was 28-hour flight. He came from Nigeria, I came from Nairobi. And we thought that we were going to have a 4-hour meeting with the folks at TPG. It ended up being actually an hour. And Bill actually had only 30 minutes. And so we had done a lot of prep, but we got into the meeting, and it was unbelievable that actually at the end of the 30 minutes before Bill left, he said, "Okay, so let me see whether I get this straight. So what you guys have done is that you've built a payment platform, and then you've built this agriculture ecosystem that can evolve, and you can extend it to different value chains. And Bolaji runs that part of the business, and Bolaji know that. And we kind of knew that he got it. And then we had a wonderful discussion with his team, and we got a sense that they understood the business. I think more fundamentally around the Rise Fund, it's a really good connection with our thesis. We believe that payments infrastructure solves critical problems. And that's kind of the thesis of Rise, that you can actually invest in a really good business, expect commercial returns, but that business happens to transform a lot of lives, which is what we do.
Oh, great, great. So another investor in the round was Endeavor Catalyst. And for those of you who don't know Catalyst, we're now in our second fund, and some of the returns go to our investors, some go to Endeavor, because our goal ultimately is to make the entire Endeavor organization self-sustaining. And so I wanted to ask you, what did the Endeavor Catalyst presence mean to you guys in terms of, as Endeavor entrepreneurs, for Endeavor to participate in the round?
Yeah, I think the network very quickly, added a lot of value, because the network came into the fundraising journey when we were essentially just trying to grapple with talking to investors that we had never spoken to before, and investors who were new to the investing in Africa in the fintech space. A couple of things through the journey. I think the first value that I got from the network was actually through the mentorship calls during the selection process. And I remember once having a stunning call with Wenches. And I tried to explain to him my business. At the end of the thing, he said, your story is all over the place. You need to keep it tight. And so basically, we went back and kind of rewrote the deck and so on and so forth. And then actually in the sort of famous San Francisco meeting, the first couple of minutes, the icebreaker was actually talking to Bill and I think the chief operating officer of TPG about Endeavor and that sort of thing, and it kind of was an icebreaker. I think the participation of the Catalyst Fund in the round was essentially, our reading of it was Endeavor is essentially putting the money where the mouth was. And that's fantastic for a network that was already showing a lot of value during the process.
Yeah. And I think I'll add something to that, because in the room, when we mentioned Endeavor, it was like saying Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and that was very moving for me.
Thank you. So Endeavor recently opened offices in Kenya and Nigeria. We're thrilled to that. But what do you think we can do there to create the most impact?
Yeah, I think what we've seen, even from the sort of news of this large round, I think it's encouraging a lot of entrepreneurs that there's something there. And I think what we think those ecosystems need, they need a large pipeline of businesses that actually start up and go through the different stages of growth. That's not how society is designed in Nigeria, in Kenya, where we come from. We basically have a very single story. Go to school, get a good grade, go and study engineering or medicine, and then go and get a good job, right? So starting a business is really an outlier. And we think that the network just staying true to its core values will create quite a significant change in catalyzing the ecosystem.
Fantastic. And what would you say are the largest misconceptions about economic opportunity in Africa today? And what message would you like this audience to go away with this evening and the opportunity in Africa?
I mean, this is the message I would like everybody to go with regarding Africa. And it's a simple one. Africa is open for business and is ready for business. It's not the way it used to be many, many years ago. And where there's nothing, there is opportunity. And I will quote an American example. I like the stories about the development of the American West. Mm-hmm. For a long time, there was nothing in the American West. And the American government at that time said, we are opening up the West. If you go west, we'll give you land. Mm-hmm. And that was how the West developed. So the message is, if you go to Africa, it's like going west. There's lots of opportunity there for you all.
Are you going to give us land?
No, I'll give you land. But the land will be equity in companies like Cellulant.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you guys so much for sharing this with me and really paving the way for future entrepreneurs in Africa, because what Endeavor is so much about is creating entrepreneurial ecosystems where none existed before, and you cannot do that without role models, you cannot do that without examples, and you can't do it without leaders, and you guys are all of those things. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thank you.
Thank you.